Hey friends, thanks so much for joining us on our video. We're so glad you're here with us. We're here with Ellyn. Been in the United States for close to
2 weeks, I think.
Yeah. El Salvador, our missionary, one of the missionaries that we support, and we're just so glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
How's your trip in the United States been so far?
It's been wonderful. It's been great to meet in person with people that I normally only talk with on email. But at the same time, it's been busy and exhausting to try to squeeze in everything.
And you miss your family.
Yes, and I do miss my family.
Well, we've been looking forward to this moment, and I'd like to just get caught up a little bit because we've all been through the twist in terms of pandemic, and it certainly affected your life. In fact, you were here with us, am I right, to February, right before the beginning of the pandemic, and you were with us we were talking on Ash Wednesday.
On Ash Wednesday, yes.
And then tell us what happened after that, because that's...
Yes, so I was scheduled to fly back to El Salvador on March 12th. And actually, my husband called me on the 11th that evening in somewhat of a panic that things were changing in El Salvador, that the president was trying to limit movement to control the virus. And I said, oh, no, everything's going to be okay. I'll see you tomorrow. It's going to be fine. And mid-trip, I was in Houston in the airport, and a friend called me and said to stop trying to get back to El Salvador, that they had closed the borders. But honestly, at this point, even the airlines did not know what was going on and why flights were being canceled.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then there was some health issues.
Yes. So I called my mom and asked her to come. I'm coming back to RDU. Please come pick me up. And, of course, I kept thinking, well, I'll go back for Easter. I'll go back for Mother's Day. But in this time, I went to my doctor, and she heard something. My heart was really fast. And since I was here and have wonderful insurance that your church and other churches help provide for me, she said, well, get all of your tests done. And we found out that I had a pretty bad prolapse mitral valve. And I met with a cardiothoracic surgeon at Wake Med, and he got me into surgery July 7th. And probably 6 months of recovery. And the day that I went back for my checkup, he cleared me for travel. But at that time, the borders of El Salvador were still closed. You could not fly commercial. Wow. And I had been waiting and calling the consulate in Charlotte and asked, can you get me on a flight? Can you help me? That day when I got back to my mother's house in Rocky Mount, within 30 minutes, I got a phone call.
Oh.
And of course, I was in tears as the consulate said, if you can get to Miami, we will get you to El Salvador.
Wow. So how long had that been since you'd been?
It had been maybe 6 months or a little more.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Ellyn, we all had experiences of the pandemic here and lockdown and things like that. I have kind of two questions. One is, could you talk about lockdown when you got home? And then also talk about how lockdown affected your ministry locally in El Salvador.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So in El Salvador, the president is Nayib Bukele, and at that time in 2021 or 2020, he was fairly new in office, but he took a very aggressive approach to the virus and shut down the borders and shut down the country and asked everyone to stay home, but not like, please stay at home if you like. It was, you had to stay home, and it was patrolled by police and the army. And if you were found breaking the rules, of course, you were taken to a more strict quarantine.
How would you get basics like food? How would
so
you?
I don't remember how it was in the very beginning because things happened so fast. But the way you got food was by your identification. Certain, like maybe odd numbers could go one day and even another, but only one person from the family was allowed to go. So in the case of my husband and daughter, it was just the two of them. So, and children weren't allowed to be out. So it's, I mean, I would call on the computer and we would talk through Zoom, me and my daughter, while my husband went to the grocery store.
Wow.
Oh my God.
You were doing care
Yes.
by Zoom.
Yes.
Wow.
And I do an online Bible study, and I remember the first one. I just said, I had them praying, just praying over our family during that time, because it was very scary.
Yeah.
It was very scary. There was so much unknown, and to be separated by distance and borders and legalities that no money, no political power could cross.
Sure.
Yeah. So for me, it was a very humbling time to recognize how much God is in control of things that I have become comfortable with being either me or my husband being in control of. Yeah.
Tell us about the church during this. How did...
So similar to the church here in the United States, the church in El Salvador began meeting with people online, either through small groups or having their regular worship services online, which that too was very comforting for me, because I could connect. Yes, I could still connect with the same people that God had placed in my heart,
Wow.
And that was good to know too, that they were praying over the situation, and to be able to pray for them and know in a more direct way what was going on.
So tell us where the venture in faith is going right now as far as the ministry and mission in El Salvador.
So for me, once things began, let me back up a second. I teach, one of the jobs I get to do in El Salvador is to teach English. We have a Methodist school, and currently we serve 550 students, pre-K through high school.
Wow.
And in 2020, it was maybe 480, something like that. And so I was able to continue teaching because that also went online. So I was teaching my students from North Carolina.
My goodness.
And they're connecting in El Salvador. So that was really great too. But once we were able to go back to in-person classes, there was this hybrid thing for a while. But this year we're in 2022.
Right.
I believe, yes.
Yeah, right.
This year in 2022,
Let me look at my watch,
let me think. Our school year is from January to November. So when we went back full force this January, and it has been very full schedule. Everything has just gone back really fast, and that's been an interesting adjustment to go from having the hybrid to being full on, because I've also... God has allowed me to use the changes that we're open to with COVID to do some things differently in the church ministry, so that I can get back into my original purpose in El Salvador, which is feeding into or pouring into leaders of children's ministry.
Okay.
And so on the weekends, my focus is on that. But we've been able to do things a little different because people are a little more open to trying it a different way after this experience. So instead of focusing on writing curriculum, I have tried to do like short-term events that would affect as many churches of the Methodist churches as possible. For example, last December, we did something called Navidad con Jesus. Similar to programs that give gifts to children at Christmas time, but we went with an intentional message to share about Jesus's love. We talked about our emotions, because children and families were it was really heavy, and no one was really talking about all these feelings we're going through in the pandemic. That to talk about feelings in El Salvador is not a common thing. And so we took children and youth from the different churches, we'll say from the conference, and visited each of the Methodist churches over 2 or 3 days and shared about emotions and how by inviting Jesus into our lives, he takes our heavy, sad, angry emotions and changes them through time, through us allowing him into our lives. And so that was a really powerful event. And we've done another one similar in August.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
We have this special relationship, and it's through Board of Global Ministries.
Yes.
And what do we call it officially? It's a sponsoring. How would?
Well, that is one of the things that I would say that we have a covenant relationship.
Yes.
Yes. I would say we have a covenant relationship. And that is one of the things that as I visit that I would like to talk with this church body about making that, and there's paperwork that you can do, in our denomination.
Always paperwork.
So I think that's something we need to do to make it a on paper formal commitment.
Official, yeah.
Yes.
No, that's great. And I think that's something that we've covenanted together with, but I think making that official is always a good thing.
Can you help us with that?
I can.
Because we have a very active mission council.
Yes.
And they have really been so interested in kind of being the listening group here in our church that gets your message out into our larger congregation. So what are some things we could do that would deepen that relationship?
Yes. Well, as we approach this topic, I'm processing and thinking that, I learn as I go. And I've realized at this time in my itineration how important the communication is between the missionary and the supporting churches. And that's something in day-to-day life that it's easy to, I don't know, overlook it. I don't know if that's the correct word.
Well, you're doing your daily ministry.
Right.
It's a hard thing to make sure and to think about that. And it also goes both ways. I mean, part of it's the supporting or covenantal groups that are, back in the States supporting you. It's our responsibility to ask too. So it's a both and.
Yes.
And we also have our daily ministry that we're all doing, so it's the making that a part of the daily.
Yes. And so I've realized how important these face-to-face conversations are, even though it is an interruption to our day-to-day.
Well, yeah,
but it's an important, it's a worthwhile interruption.
Right.
So I think, just the communication back and forth makes a big deal because it reminds each of us that we're in this together and that it's not our mission, but God's.
I'm getting intrigued here thinking about these special events you're having with children.
Yes.
I wonder if we could zoom in on one of those.
Oh, that would be cool.
Is there a possibility of that?
It is. Mm-hmm. It would take some planning and thinking outside of boxes, which I love to do. But yeah, that would be pretty cool.
What do you think, Patrick? Patrick's in the room here with us.
Yeah.
he does a lot of our good tech work.
Ellyn, you sent out your most recent newsletter. Parts of it are in our jot and tittle. But how often do you send that out, and where can folks find that or sign up for it individually? I mean, we'll send it out as a church, pieces of it. But if folks going to want to, that are watching this video, how do they get to that and that kind of thing?
So the best way to get to that, and I suppose I'm a little old school, old fashioned maybe,
That's all right.
but would be to email me. And I would recommend my Gmail, which is Ellyn, Ellyn, Dubberly, Dubberly, @gmail.com, which I think usually with your newsletter,
I think it should be linked.
Up.
It should be linked there, but just folks that see that might see this, vice versa. That
but
kind
if
of thing.
people would email me, then I will add them to my list. And I I get it when God stirs my heart. I try to do, my goal is like maybe definitely a quarterly update, but that does not always happen in the reality of things.
Right.
But I try.
Yeah, I just think, I mean, again, we share those when you send them to us and through our missions council and stuff. But I know individuals that are at home, they're praying, they're doing their daily devotions, that kind of thing, and they're like, oh yeah, Ellyn, I watched that video. I want to make sure that and they might go look for it. So I just wanted to.
And that would be awesome.
Yes. Do we have her picture online?
We do. It's all on our website under our missions tab, and in fact, your whole newsletter's there, so that they can look there too.
That'd
if you go to centralumc.org and under the missions tab, it's linked there too. So, well, I just want to say thanks for being. I mean, you are on this. You were telling us a little bit before we got on and started video, this kind of whirlwind trip in the United States to meet with all the folks you're in covenant and partnership with, and we just really appreciate you taking some time and doing a video with us to share with the folks of Central. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ellyn,
and making time to make this video.
God bless you.
Yeah, blessings.
Amen.